Ruth's life and journey. So, in talking about Ruth, we're looking at how she lived her mom life. And just quick reminder, living your best mom life is measuring your moments, owning your story, and meeting your needs. How are you choosing to be present for yourself? Give yourself a chance to use your time and energy in ways that allow you to have the kind of environment that you need. Recognizing that your presence is a gift. It's not only a gift to you, but it is a gift to your family. How are you owning your story? Are you choosing to see and value all the parts of yourself, every single part of you, so that you see your story central to you? A lot of times it's easy for us to feel like our story happened to us and not for us. And then we lose the ability to stay centered, to stay directed in what we're doing and how we're doing it. So owning your story is you saying that you get to choose the decisions. You get to choose how you move. Nobody else's energy has to be your reality. And then meeting your needs. Are you choosing to give yourself what you need? Are you choosing to be responsive to where you are and what is required of you in the seasons of your life? And that requires that we use our time, our talents, and our temples to honor ourselves because we are deserving and we are worthy of that. So as we start with Ruth's story, we are reading, so all of Ruth, I would encourage you to read the entirety of the book of Ruth, but we are specifically talking about Ruth chapter 4, verses 10 through 16. So in this portion of Ruth chapter 4, Boaz has chosen to purchase land that belonged to Ruth's dead husband and her husband's father. And so in exchange for purchasing this land, he is seen as the guardian redeemer of the family. And the guardian redeemer's role was to ensure that the family, the widows of a family, did not go without having what they needed just because their husbands were no longer alive. The guardian redeemer's role was to make sure that they were secured financially, physically, and spiritually. He became their head, their covering. People could not have access to those women without going through the guardian redeemer. He was responsible for their affairs. He was responsible for ensuring that they had all that they needed. And so in chapter 4, starting with verse 10, Boaz says, I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrath and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. So through Ruth's life, we learn about her personal struggle, her parenting challenge, and her spiritual journey. And we get to see how all of these impact the ability to legacy build. And we see this through persistence, poise, and purpose. So let's start with Ruth's personal struggle. So earlier in the book of Ruth, after her husband dies, Naomi's husband has died. Both of her sons have died. And she feels like the Lord has been extremely harsh towards her. And in feeling like the Lord has been harsh towards her, she feels like she should be just alone. And so she tells her daughters, go back to your own people, and I'm going back to mine. And both of the daughters feel like, is this really what we're supposed to do? Are we supposed to leave this woman by herself? Well, one of them leaves, but Ruth chooses to be persistent. And she says, I'm not going to leave you. Where you go, I'm going to go. Your people are going to be my people. Your God is going to be my God. And may your God deal harshly with me if anything else other than death separates us. And at that point, Naomi recognized and understood how persistent and how serious Ruth was about maintaining her presence in her life, about being connected to her. And it was that persistence that helps us recognize and see that even in the face of grief and loss as a young wife, it could have been really easy for Ruth to, just decide, okay, well, I'm a Moabite. We don't even come from the same people. We don't really have the same heritage. So now that my husband has died, I'm done with this family. Like I'm gone. But what I believe, it doesn't explicitly say this in the Bible, but I believe that Ruth saw something in Naomi that was inspiring. There was something about who Naomi was, about how intentional she had been with her family, about how genuine and sincere she had been in her faith, that inspired Ruth to say, this is where I belong. And I know that this is where I belong. And the feelings of loss can sometimes make us feel out of place, whether it's the loss of a partner or a spouse, whether it's the loss of a child, the loss of a sibling, the loss of a financial status, or the loss of a job or an opportunity. Loss has a way of making us feel out of place in ourselves. But I believe through the lens of Ruth's story and seeing her connection to Naomi, the Lord reminds us that we are never alone. We are never alone. When he calls people to be his hands and feet, it is because he desires that you always have a living and tangible reminder that he has a plan and a purpose for you, that he is intentional about you, that your path is not just one of coincidence, but it is one of providence. He is so provident about what he has purposed for you, that even when you can't see it yourself, he will bring people into your path to inspire you, to encourage you, to facilitate your good, to remind you of your capacity. And I believe that that's what Ruth saw in Naomi, because our life brings about change. It changes how we see our roles. It changes how we see our position. And those changes can sometimes make us question our worth, which is why, as moms, your worth, your entirety, the entirety of your identity cannot just be in being a mom. Because as our kids grow up, as life changes, as we shift into different stages of womanhood, you have to be able to reorient yourself and to know that the way you see your value is not just because you're a mom. Being a mom can enhance it because it helps us to recognize and understand those inherent pieces of wonder about ourselves. Like, oh, I never realized until I became a mom how resourceful I was. Or I didn't realize until I became a mom how creative I was. But your identity cannot merely be placed in other people or in just one part of your life. There is so much more to you that defines you than just being a wife, than just being a mom. Those are important parts of you, but they are not the only parts of you. And we see the understanding. Like Naomi was like, okay, I don't have a husband anymore. I'm not a mom anymore. The Lord has dealt harshly with me, so I should just be alone. And Ruth was like, I'm not a wife anymore, but I still have somebody in my life that I can look at and aspire to have the kind of strength, aspire to have the kind of mental fortitude or the kind of spiritual growth that helps me understand who I am, and that my value doesn't just lie in one part of my life. And I love that about Ruth's story. But then we also see her persistence in being away from her family and her having to learn to lean into the family that she acquired through marriage, and even navigating that unfamiliar part of building new relationships. And this is true even if you're not married. Like when you have a child with someone, you didn't have that child by yourself. There is a history and a part of that child that exists, whether you ended the relationship or whether the relationship is enduring. And being able to build relationships apart from your family, just like your little nuclear dynamic or your known family, brings blessing to you because it teaches you a part of you that you didn't recognize before. And especially as your kids grow up. Naomi and Ruth both had to learn to lean in to being family. And we all know through relationship challenges, like there are parts that you have to learn how to navigate when you're dealing with somebody else's background, somebody else's context, somebody else's family. There are challenges. Naturally, it's like a growing pain. But when you learn to lean in and to see the value in it, there is so much good that comes from it. My mother-in-law passed away in February, but she taught me parts of myself. She was able to see things about me and to encourage those things. Even my father-in-law, my husband's stepfather, he sees things in me and encourages those parts in ways that my own family doesn't. And it's not that they can't or won't. It's that sometimes your people see you through their lens. And it takes the Lord bringing you into contact with people outside of your family, outside of your norm, outside of what you're familiar with, in order to sharpen and to spur and to stir up parts of you that need to exist in the world in order for you to accomplish your purpose. And one thing that stood out to me in reading Ruth's story, Ruth was a Moabite, and her husband and her husband's people were Hebrew. And even though they had a different religion, they had a different culture, they had different cultural practices and norms that they existed by, there was something that Ruth saw about these people that she connected with, that she saw as valuable, and it made her choose to move in that direction. There was something about it that inspired her personal vision. Something about the way that they practiced, the way that they believed, the way that they operated, the dynamic of that family, that she said, this is where I belong. This is what is for me. And from that, she formed a vision of herself that death and loss and grief couldn't even change. And that is what she was persistent about. She was persistent about her personal vision and her self-intention. And sometimes as moms, we don't have that. We lose it somewhere along the way. Maybe it's, being sleep deprived. Maybe it's along the way of being so committed to the idea of what a good mom is, or trying to fit a mold or a preconception of what tradition says you should be. So you choose that. You settle into a comfortable or complacent space, and you lose the vision of yourself, or you lose the self-intention that says, there is a place that I belong, that I was made for, and I'm going to walk in that, regardless of the changes, regardless of the shifts, regardless of how many times I have to pivot. This is me. This is where I belong. This is what I need to walk in the power of my purpose. And I love that Ruth was able to see herself. She saw herself so much so that Naomi telling her, no, go back to your people, made her indignant. It made her stand up for herself and say, no, I'm not leaving, because I know that this is a part of my purpose and I'm going to walk in it, regardless of what anybody else has to say. My self-intention is directed towards my good. So I'm forsaking comfort. I'm forsaking familial ties that keep me feeling like this is who I have to be, and I can't step out of that to be myself, to walk in my power and my purpose. I'm forsaking the traditions of my people, the traditions that I've grown to know and accept as a reality that really don't have to be reality, so that I can walk in the vision of myself. I absolutely love it. And then we see Ruth's parenting struggle. So we see this through her poise. And initially, the word poise is what the Lord brought to my mind. And I was like, is that the right word? Is this the best word to choose? And I'm going to read to you guys the definition of poise, because when I read the definition, I was like, okay, this makes sense. So poise means to be or cause to be balanced. To have balance in your own life in a way that keeps you centered in your story, but also allows you to see beyond where you are right now. That requires balance. And when we're unbalanced, the situations happening around us can cause us to only look in one direction. So we don't see the potential and the possibility of good where we are. We're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening. And that's all we see. But when we're able to be poised, that means positioned for the goodness of the Lord to show up in ways that we may not expect. We get to see the totality of who we are. We get to bear witness to the opportunities and the potential that have been designed for us. And that is where having that vision for yourself comes in, but also where having self-intention comes in, because it requires that we allow space to accept change. It requires that we choose to own and recognize the possibility and the potential for good around us by being open to newness. Ruth wasn't so focused on her grief that she couldn't see the opportunity, because Naomi leaving was an opportunity. Sometimes we see loss in isolation. We just see it as the removal of something. But because the Lord is the God of both spiritual and natural law, the opposite is also true. Where he removes something, he also brings an opportunity for something else. So if we feel like we're struggling to find ourselves after a loss or in the midst of grief, sometimes it's because we're fighting. We're fighting the acceptance of the new, because we're so focused on the removal of the old. You cannot hyper focus. You can, but it won't serve you any good. It doesn't serve you any good to so hyper focus on what is lost that you don't get to see what is gained. Naomi struggled with that. She lost her sons, but she gained 2 daughters. And we see in verse 16 that the people of her village, of her town, were like, this daughter-in-law that you have has been better to you than 7 sons. And if she had stayed so fixed in that place of grief that she couldn't accept the newness, she would not have had the opportunity to see the potential and the possibility for good happening around her. That requires balance. It requires balance in building healthy boundaries and saying, okay, yes, I'm going to grieve, but I'm not going to allow my grief to cause me to hyper focus on what I lost. I know that my mother-in-law's passing is going to have a tremendous effect, not only on my husband and my kids, but on his siblings. And it's going to be long standing because there is a loss there. But even in that loss, the Lord has given an opportunity for us to gain a reflection, to gain an understanding and awareness of her reach, of how she existed in the world, of what she was intentional about, and then to celebrate that, to hold it, to have it, and then to move forward in life with that, to honor her legacy. And I think sometimes when we lose something, we don't recognize the impact that it's had on our legacy yet. Because for everything there's a season, and for everything that there is a time. So when that loss happens, are you making space to honor it and to acknowledge it? That's the balance in grief. Yes, I lost this thing, but can I honor it and acknowledge it in a sustainable way? Can I honor it and acknowledge it in a way that leaves me with a heart to receive what is also being gained? And I think that is what Ruth also saw in Naomi. She was able to see the wisdom that Naomi had, even when Naomi didn't have it for herself. So there's a part in the book of Ruth where they get back to Ruth's town, to Naomi's town. And in Naomi's town, everybody comes up to her and they're like, "We can't believe you're back." And she tells them, "Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, because I'm bitter and I'm in this place where I don't understand fully yet why the Lord is dealing so harshly with me." And even in her renaming herself, Ruth stays poised. She could hear the conversation. She knew what her mother-in-law was saying, but she stayed poised. She didn't feel the need to check her. She didn't feel the need to reevaluate and say, "You know what, maybe I need to go back home because this woman clearly doesn't know who she is. And if she doesn't know who she is, how am I supposed to know who I am?" No, she had a vision for herself, and she was very intentional. She had self-intention, so much so that she said, "I'm going to let her have her space and time. And in the meantime, I'm going to show up for her in the fullness of myself, because I'm going to practice balance. I'm going to set boundaries. I'm only going to own what belongs to me. I'm not going to try to fix situations for other people." And in doing that, Naomi tells her about how to operate in her town. Naomi tells her about how she should conduct herself in the fields. Naomi tells her about how she should lay at Boaz's feet and position herself to receive. She's still able to give wisdom even in this space of grief and loss. Naomi still demonstrated the wisdom that Ruth expected. She still got what she needed to walk in her vision. And I think that is so beautifully demonstrated by the Lord in this example of motherhood, because Naomi, as a mother, chooses to still give wisdom from a space that would set Ruth up for success. She understood that Ruth had a vision for herself, and she was able to give to her in alignment with Ruth's vision. And sometimes when we are not poised, that means we're not positioned to receive the goodness that the Lord has designed for us. When we're not poised, we miss out on the opportunity. We're not open to receive the wisdom. So we cannot operate in the vision that we have of ourselves. And it is hard. It is hard to be poised enough to practice balance. It means you have to let some stuff go. And if you're fighting against what the Lord is saying, let go, you're going to feel out of place. You're going to feel out of place in your own life. You're going to feel like your story doesn't make sense. But instead of fighting against it, take a step back and say, okay, what am I missing? Where am I not seeing what I'm gaining? Because clearly there is something for me to gain here. Clearly there is and understanding that I'm supposed to have and operate in. And if you don't have it, do you have a vision for yourself? And if you have a vision of yourself, are you operating in an intentional way? Are you practicing self-intention? Because we can have a vision, but then be doing lots of things that are out of alignment with that vision, because we're not measuring ourselves in a way that says, okay, this serves a purpose. This serves my vision. At any point in time, Ruth could have been like, I had a vision, but you know what? I'm going to just go and marry the first man that I see. I had a vision, but I don't really like this town so much. So I'm going to live adjacent to Naomi, not really with her. I had a vision of myself, but this requires me to put in too much energy. So I'm going to settle for something that's more convenient. Because the other part of Ruth's story is that she had to work. She had to remain steadfast to walk in her vision. And that showed up by her having to work her vision. She was in the fields gleaning. She was in the fields sweating, working, putting in time. And it was noticed. It became notable. People saw her. They recognized her character. They recognized her nature. She was sowing into what she believed was in alignment with the vision she had of herself. She saw that she was supposed to be connected to her mother-in-law. She saw that she was supposed to sow good into that relationship. She was supposed to care for her mother-in-law. And in doing that, it garnered the attention of the guardian redeemer. I love this parallel because Boaz, a lot of people are like, well, every woman's supposed to have a Boaz. Every woman's supposed to marry a Boaz. Yes, this is true. But in this example, the Lord is exemplifying himself. The Lord is saying, I am your guardian redeemer. I am supposed to be your protector. I am supposed to be your provider. I am supposed to be the one who ensures that you have all that you need. And you can be married, you can be single, you can have kids, you cannot have kids, and try to be your own guardian redeemer. And if you're trying to be your own guardian redeemer, you're going to wear yourself out because you're not practicing balance. The Lord sees women as valuable and worthy of his presence, his power, and his protection. So whether you are a single mom or a married mom, there is a guardian redeemer that has been positioned for you, but you have to be poised for him. And when you're not poised for him, when you're trying to do all of the things in your own power and in your own strength, which means now you're not open to accepting the change that comes from loss because you don't want to see what you're supposed to gain. You want to do it all on your own. You don't have balance because there are no healthy boundaries in your life. You're trying to be your everything. You cannot walk in your vision. You cannot own your power or your purpose. And it's going to cause people to take away the wrong impression of who you are. It's going to cause people to mischaracterize you because they don't know your true nature. When you are in hustle mode as a woman, it changes how you show up for your family. I had to learn that the hard way. I wanted to be all of the things, all of the solutions. And when the Lord said, let this job go, I did not understand. It took me years to get to the space of being willing to accept, celebrate, and see that with the loss of that job came the gaining of the opportunity to own my gifts, operate in my talents, and walk in my purpose. My purpose is this. This is part of it. And if I had not listened, none of us would be here today. None of us would be listening to the importance of being poised, which means positioned to receive the goodness that the Lord God has intended for us by practicing balance. That is poise. And I can tell you, it requires you to be in tune with yourself every day to be poised, because there are things that we have to surrender and let go of every day. Part of it is conditioning. Part of it is the natural expectations that come from being moms. Part of it is still healing while also having to be on for your people. Like, all of that is a part of having to practice self-awareness and saying, I don't want to be my own guardian redeemer. I would rather accept the opportunity to be poised so that I am in the right position to receive what you intend for me. And if that means there are some things that I have to let go of, I want to let go of those. If that means that I have to take on some new roles, if that means that I need to be out here working my vision and only doing things that are in alignment with the vision that I have of myself, because you gave it to me, so that people see my character and they understand my nature, and it allows me to reap good. It allows me to receive the goodness that you have for me because I'm positioned to. That's how you get to walk in your vision. And then we see Ruth's spiritual journey. And there are three things that really stand out, because Ruth never saw herself as a victim of circumstance. Never. There is no mention in her book about woe is me or why do bad things happen to good people. She was not a victim in her story. She understood that this was a thing that happened. There were circumstances that she could not control. There was famine in the land, and her husband, his brother, and her dad all got sick and died. There was nothing that she could do. And she didn't take that and own it as a fault or a failure of her own. Things are going to happen to people, people that we love, people that we know, people that we don't know. And the best thing that we can do is determine how we want to show up. How do we want to show up? Do we want to show up as the best version of ourselves and say, I'm here for you, I can be a support for you with healthy boundaries and love and compassion? Or do we want to show up as the frazzled, unaware version of ourselves, where we start taking on everybody else's everything because that's the only way to prove to people that you love them, is to sacrifice yourself and set yourself on fire so that they're comfortable? Ruth didn't do that. Even though Naomi was struggling and hurting, even though she had been there while her husband was sick, while her father-in-law was sick, while her brother-in-law was sick, she didn't take on the conditions around her to define her. But she chose to remain central in her story so that she could see the value and the evolution of who she was becoming as she worked her vision. I'm sure gleaning wheat in a field makes you strong. I'm sure it made her a little bit tanner than she was previously, a little more brown, a little more sun-kissed. That's part of the evolution. But if she had chosen to be a victim, if she had chosen to forsake maintaining her poise, it would have diminished the value of her purpose. It would have changed how people characterized her. It would have changed how Boaz saw her. It would have changed how she received the blessings and the gifts of the guardian redeemer. And the only way to ensure that we're not doing that is to have a willing heart, to see and to be. To see and to be is the motivation for the rest of the year. That should be our prayer. Lord, help me to see and help me to be. Help me to see myself as deserving of goodness, of deserving of a guardian redeemer who has purposed for me goodness, who responds to my persistence. That means every day that I get up and I mother, I wife, I partner, I work, I profession in whatever my profession is, every day that I get up to do that with compassion, with balance, with healthy boundaries. Lord, be responsive to me so that I continue to see myself the way you see me, to know that I am worthy of the goodness that you have for me. And then, Lord, even more than that, help me to be available so that as things change, as there is loss and there is gain, I am open to receive the opportunities that arise. I accept them and I walk in them because I understand that I am building my legacy. Change is going to happen, but how we respond to it is so key to whether or not we are built and blessed by it or if we're broken and bruised. You were made to be built and blessed by what the Lord has set apart just for you. Each of us are. You are deserving of goodness. You are worthy of having a guardian redeemer. You don't have to be every solution. You don't have to be everything to everybody. That's not your job. You have a guardian redeemer who says, poise yourself, position yourself to receive the good that I intend for you to have. Maintain your balance. Don't allow the changes of this season to cause you to lose sight of the vision of yourself or the power of your purpose. You're not just a mom. You're not just a wife. You are so much more than that. And when you find balance in the parts of yourself and the worth of each part, that's when you can choose to grow. That's when you can look at other people and see something valuable about what they possess. And instead of feeling insecure or a sense of competition because of it, or having to compare yourself to other people, you actually are inspired by it. And that allows you to own your own purpose and your own power so that you are able to practice self-compassion. Have that kind of self-awareness and self-love that says, I deserve this space that's made for me. I don't have to be the solution for everybody. I don't have to accept everybody's everything. I don't have to be responsible for the choices that other people make. That's not a reflection of me. But I'm going to work my vision. I'm going to tend to it with balance and poise so that my nature shines through. The quality of my character is revealed in how I deal with people, especially my children, my partner, my husband. That way, no one can mischaracterize me, and I know that I'm building my legacy. I love that Ruth saw Naomi's nature. She understood the wisdom that she had. And it wasn't about competition. It wasn't about, well, you didn't love your son enough, or I loved him better, or I lost more than you, or you lost more than me. It wasn't a competition or a comparison. It was merely a moment and a chance for her to draw inspiration from the strength that she saw and to use that to build her vision. And then to make it foundational to the motivation that she used to walk in her purpose. And your purpose is revealed all around you. Sometimes people are like, well, I don't know my purpose. Your purpose is all around you. The things that people say about you, the things that you're complimented about, the things that you feel the most confident in when you're doing, the things that make you feel the most competent and capable. That's your purpose. Where are you shining? Where are your gifts naturally showing up? Because it happens first in your home, and then it extends outside of it. So if you're not sure of what your purpose is, Figure out the vision that you have for yourself. Who do you want to be? And is it sustainable over every season of your life? Does it require for you to be attached to a specific person or a specific place? Because if it does, that's not the vision you should have. Your vision should be attainable regardless of where you are, regardless of who is around. It is your gift. It is how you show up to build your legacy. And it doesn't have to do with a tradition or a culture or a specific place or people. It has everything to do with how you have been gifted, the beauty of your story, your moments, and your worth from your guardian redeemer. And so we see the mental health takeaways from Ruth's story. We see that she chose to grieve in a healthy way. She chose to self-care by channeling her energy into what would strengthen her and the community around her. She practiced self-awareness by being in tune with the changes that she was going through and meeting her needs. She practiced self-awareness by allowing and embracing those changes while maintaining the vision that she had of herself. Her life shows us that the challenges and the blessings of being persistent, poised, and purposed matter. As a young widow and daughter-in-law, she allowed the relationship and the connection that she had to Naomi to become the demonstration and the drive of her own faith and vision. She did not allow grief to change her willingness to work that vision. She understood the value of recognizing the changes that she was going through and then being responsive to those changes by being persistent about meeting her needs. No, I'm not going to leave you because this is where I need to be. And even if you're not comfortable with that, now I'm going to make it about me and the Lord. It doesn't have anything to do with you. May he deal harshly with me if anything but death separates us. She was extremely persistent. And through her poise, she maintained a willing and ready space, mentally, spiritually, and physically, to walk in her purpose, to see her story through the eyes of redemption and proof that she was not only valuable, but that the quality of her character existed beyond where she grew up, her own people, where she was living now. And she was able to build a legacy in a new place that outlived her. One of the things that always blows my mind is that Ruth is the mother of the entire line of David and the mother of the line that the Messiah enters the world through. And she wasn't even a Hebrew woman. But the Lord had to respond to her persistence. She poised herself to receive the good that he had for her, even in going through loss and change. That did not change the vision that she had of herself and how willing she was to work it. And the Lord had to respond to that. He has to respond to your persistence. So whatever you're working towards, do not give up. No matter what is happening around you, because your purpose exists for you. She positioned herself to receive the opportunities and the goodness that the Lord had for her. And because of that, she exists as a legacy builder for a people that did not even belong to her. And she executed her purpose with so much self-intention that her legacy outlives her and impacts each of us. That is a mom life personified. And so as we sit with her story and you recognize where yours aligns, where the things that you're going through, whether it's loss or change or building a vision of yourself or the self-intention, check in with yourself. Where are you here? Are you question 1, question 2, question 3? Are you processing and navigating the emotions of grief and loss in your own life? and making space for healing and growth? Do you have a personal vision, and are you ensuring that you are intentional about aligning your current path with your vision? Are you willing to make adjustments where it's necessary, even if it means letting go of things, whether it's traditions or comfort zones, ideals? What are you doing to work your vision? Are you approaching change and unfamiliarity with openness and optimism so that you are able to cultivate a mindset that embraces opportunities for growth and transformation, to own and walk in your purpose and your power? Feel free to take a picture if you need to so that you can come back to these questions as your week, as the month of May progresses. And then our affirmation. Feel free to take a picture of this screen as well. I am resilient, embracing each challenge as an opportunity for my growth. My journey as a mother is filled with ups and downs, but I navigate them with grace and strength. I lean into the love of my family, finding goodness in my relationships. My personal vision guides me even when it means stepping out of my comfort zone. I embrace change with an open heart, seeing the potential for growth in every situation. I find balance and set healthy boundaries, knowing when to seek guidance and when to trust my instincts. With each new role and in every season, I stay true to myself while focusing on my vision for the future. I own my story, seeing myself as powerful and worthy, not a victim of circumstance. My heart is open to goodness and opportunity, ready to build my legacy with love and purpose. I find inspiration in the strengths of others, practicing self-compassion, awareness, and love as I walk confidently in my purpose and role as a mother. I truly hope that this blessed you in the same way that it blessed me, because seeing Ruth's story is so relatable in so many ways and seasons of our lives. And it reminds us that we are absolutely more than just moms. And when we choose to honor that, when we choose to have balance and poise ourselves to receive the good that the Lord has made each of us for in our purpose, and remembering that your purpose was made for you, it changes so much. And it is definitely legacy building.